Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into a quite chilling story from the early 20th century.
Yes, the brides in the bath murders. It's a case that still, fascinates people.
Absolutely. We're looking at this guy who, well, basically weaponized marriage.
He did, exploited it for money, and committed these awful murders that look like accidents.
And what's really compelling is how it all unraveled. Sharp eyes and some really early, quite revolutionary forensic science.
Exactly. We've pulled together quite a bit of material, old news reports, inquest details, historical accounts.
Yeah, all the contemporary stuff. So our mission really is to try and understand how this seemingly ordinary man could do these things.
And also to look at the pretty clever detective work in science that caught him.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the man himself, George Joseph Smith.
Right. Born 1872. His early life, well, it wasn't exactly straightforward, was it?
No, not at all. He was in a reformatory by age 9, I think.
That's right. And then later, prison for things like fraud, theft.
Yeah, a pattern starts early. Even his first legal marriage to Caroline Thornhill in 1898.
And he used an alias even then, George Oliver Love.
Right. And they were apparently partners in crime, weren't they? She'd steal from employers. He'd sort of encourage it.
Until they both ended up in prison for it.
And when he got out, she'd already fled to Canada.
Yeah, she got out first and left. He just found another woman, took her savings, and vanished.
So right from the beginning, you see this method. Deception, money, relationships.
Precisely. And this just ramps up between 1908 and 1914 with all the bigamous marriages.
It's quite a list, isn't it? Florence Wilson,
Edith Pegler, Sarah Freeman.
Bessie Mundy, Alice Burnham. It's just one after another.
And the pattern is always the same, isn't it? Marry them, get control of any money or property, and then poof, he's gone.
It's astonishingly brazen. Even marrying Alice Reed in 1914 under another name, Charles Oliver James.
It really was a calculated system, not just random opportunism.
But the stealing was one thing. It wasn't until the deaths started looking connected that real suspicion fell on him.
Exactly. That's where the letter from Joseph Crossley comes in. January 1915.
Oh, yes, the boarding house owner in Blackpool. He noticed something odd.
He did. He'd read about the death of a Margaret Elizabeth Lloyd in Highgate just before Christmas 1914.
Okay.
And it reminded him, and also Alice Smith's father, Charles Burnham, reminded them of another death. Alice Smith, back in December 1913, also in Blackpool.
And both died in the bath.
Both found dead in their bathtubs. Seemingly accidental drownings.
So Crossley puts two and two together and writes to the police.
He does. He sends the newspaper clippings, points out the similarities. Margaret Lloyd found by her husband, John Lloyd, and the landlady.
In a small tub, wasn't it? Only partly filled.
Yes, 3/4 full, apparently. Very strange. And Alice Smith found by her husband, George Smith.
And Alice Smith, she wasn't wealthy, but she had savings.
And George Smith had taken out a £500 life insurance policy on her.
Oof. Okay, that's starting to look bad.
Very. So this letter really kickstarts the proper investigation.
Right. Enter Detective Inspector Arthur Neal. What did he make of it initially?
Well, he went to the Lloyd's lodgings in Highgate, saw the small tub, and immediately thought, this is hard to believe an adult drowning in that.
Yeah, seems unlikely. Did he speak to the coroner?
He did, Dr. Bates, who confirmed, no signs of violence. Just a tiny bruise on Margaret's elbow, nothing else.
But then other things started popping up, didn't they?
Oh, yes. Lloyd, or rather Smith, had a will made just hours before Margaret died.
Making him the sole beneficiary.
Exactly. And she'd withdrawn all her savings that very same day.
Wow. The timing is just incredible.
And then the insurance company gets involved, Yorkshire Insurance. They query a £700 policy on Margaret.
Taken out when?
Just days before the marriage, again with John as the beneficiary.
So Neal tells him to hold off on paying out.
He asks for a delay, yeah. And meanwhile, he finds out that Alice Smith, the earlier victim, she also had life insurance, a will in her husband's favor.
No way.
And, get this, Smith had specifically checked out the bathtub before they took the lodgings in Blackpool.
He inspected the bathtub. Okay, that's beyond suspicious. That's premeditation.
It certainly looks that way.
Yeah.
The pattern was becoming undeniable.
So Neal has this growing suspicion. Multiple aliases, similar deaths, insurance policies. What does he do?
He plays it smart. He actually tells the insurance company for Margaret Lloyd, okay, you can proceed with the payout.
Really? Why?
Because he arranges to have the lawyer's office watched. He figures the beneficiary, John Lloyd, will have to show up initially to collect.
Ah, clever, like baiting a trap.
Exactly. And sure enough, a man fitting the description turns up.
Is it Smith?
It is. Neil confronts him. The man admits, yes, he's John Lloyd.
But denies being George Smith.
Adamantly denies it. But Neil has enough by now. The descriptions match the pattern. He arrests him.
On what charge initially? Murder.
No, initially for bigamy. Using the different aliases, marrying illegally. That was the solid charge they had right then.
Okay, so they have him in custody. But proving murder, especially these accidental drownings, that's harder.
Much harder. And that's where the science really comes in. They bring in the pathologist Bernard Spilsbury.
A big name even then, right?
Yeah.
Known for being incredibly meticulous.
Absolutely. A pioneer in forensic pathology. His first step was the exhumation of Margaret Lloyd's body.
What was he looking for?
Well, first to confirm drowning, which he did.
Huh?
But then, was it accidental or forced? He noted that tiny bruise again, some other very small marks.
Anything else?
He observed that the usual signs of a prolonged drowning struggle weren't really there. It suggested death came very quickly, almost like a stroke or sudden collapse.
Did they consider poison?
They did, yes. Tests were ordered, but came back negative. No poison.
So Spilsbury is faced with a drowning, but it doesn't look quite right.
Exactly. And then he has this really brilliant idea. He decides they need to conduct experiments in the actual bathtub.
In Margaret Lloyd's bathtub.
Yes. To see physically what could and couldn't have happened in that specific space.
That's taking forensic investigation to a whole new level for the time.
It really was. And while this is going on, the newspapers are having a field day. Brides in the baths. It catches the public imagination.
And that publicity leads to another connection, doesn't it?
It does. News of the investigation reaches Herne Bay, and suddenly, a third death with striking similarities comes to light.
This would be Beatrice Mundy, Bessie Mundy.
Beatrice Bessie Mundy, yes. She'd married a Henry Williams back in 1910.
Let me guess Henry Williams was, actually.
George Joseph Smith, another alias.
Of course. What happened with Bessie?
Well, they rented a house, initially without a bath. Then about 7 weeks later, they specifically rented one with a bath.
Okay. That sounds familiar.
And Bessie apparently saw her GP, Dr. Frank French, complaining of headaches. Smith told the doctor she was having epileptic seizures.
But she only mentioned headaches herself.
According to the records, yes. Then, July 1912, Williams reports finding Bessie dead in the bath.
How did he describe finding her?
Head under the water, legs straight out, feet sort of sticking out the end of the tub. Crucially, no signs of a struggle.
And the doctor?
Dr. French, given the history of seizures Williams had mentioned, attributed the drowning to epilepsy, an accident during a fit.
And I bet there was a will.
Oh, yes. Made just 5 days before her death, leaving everything quite a substantial amount, over 2,500 pounds to her dear husband, Henry Williams's.
It's the same script, almost exactly, just different names and places.
Identical pattern, and once Inspector Neal circulated photos of Smith.
They identified Henry Williams as the same guy.
Immediately, it locked everything together. Williams, Lloyd, Smith, all the same man.
So now Spilsbury has 3 very similar deaths to consider. Did he examine Bessie's body too?
Yes, it was exhumed as well. And he found something quite significant there.
What was that?
Goose pimples. Cutis anserina, the technical term, on her thigh.
And that means?
It's a known post-mortem reaction to cold, often seen in drowning victims when the body hits cold water. It was another piece confirming drowning.
So 3 drownings, 3 identical patterns, 1 man linking them all. And Spilsbury has the bodies, the stories, and the bathtubs.
Yes. Remarkably, all 3 bathtubs were collected and sent to London for Spilsbury to analyze.
Amazing. What did he learn from the tubs themselves?
Well, he looked at their dimensions, compared them to the victim's heights, particularly Bessie Mundy's case.
The one supposedly caused by epilepsy.
Right. Spilsbury reasoned that, given her height and the small size of that tub, an epileptic fit probably wouldn't result in drowning like that.
Why not?
Well, a typical grand mal seizure involves muscle rigidity, the body stiffening and often extending. It's actually quite hard to see how someone having such a fit would just fold up neatly headfirst into the water in a small tub without any splashing or struggle. The physics seemed wrong.
So if it wasn't epilepsy, and it wasn't a simple accident, what was Spilsbury thinking?
He looked at how Dr. French described finding Bessie head submerged, legs straight out. And he developed this really chilling theory.
Which was?
He proposed that Smith hadn't pushed her head under. Instead, he likely grabbed her by the feet.
Grabbed her feet.
Yes, and then suddenly, forcefully, pulled them upwards towards the head end of the bath.
What would that do?
It would cause her torso and head to slide rapidly down under the water, almost without warning. The shock, the sudden immersion, would likely cause immediate incapacitation, maybe fainting, or loss of consciousness.
Which would explain why there were no signs of struggle.
Exactly. No splashing, no defensive wounds, just sudden, silent drowning.
That's horrifyingly ingenious, but it was just a theory at that point.
It was, until Inspector Neal decided to test it.
Oh, not on
unwilling victims, no. He used female volunteers, divers, who were roughly the same build as the victims, in one of the actual bathtubs.
Seriously? What happened?
Well, first they tried just forcing the diver's head under the water. As you'd expect, she struggled, resisted strongly. But then they tried Spilsbury's method. While the diver was lying back, someone unexpectedly grabbed her feet and pulled them sharply upwards. Her head slid straight under the water. No resistance, no warning, just whoosh.
Wow. Did it work? I mean, did it incapacitate her?
In one test, yes. The diver apparently lost consciousness almost instantly. She later said all she felt was a rush of water.
My God. That confirms it then. It proved Spilsbury's theory was physically possible and likely how Smith did it.
It provided incredibly strong support for the theory, yes. Horrifying, but crucial evidence.
So armed with this forensic evidence, the case against Smith for murder must have looked much stronger.
Absolutely. He was formally arrested for murder in February 1915, charged in March. The trial began at the Old Bailey in June.
A major trial, I imagine.
Oh, huge. The prosecution was led by Archibald Bodkin, a prominent lawyer, but they faced a legal hurdle.
Which was?
Under English law then, you could really only try someone for one murder at a time. They chose to prosecute him for Bessie Mundy's murder.
But they knew about Alice Smith and Margaret Lloyd, too. Could they use that information?
That was the key question. The prosecution argued, very effectively, that they should be allowed to present evidence from the other two deaths.
Why?
To establish what they called a system, to show this wasn't a one-off tragedy, but a repeated pattern of criminal behavior: marry, insure, kill, inherit.
Did the judge allow that? It sounds potentially prejudicial.
The judge, Mr. Justice Scruton, did allow it, despite the defense protesting strongly. He agreed it showed a deliberate method, not just coincidence.
That must have been devastating for the defense.
It was a landmark decision, really, using prior similar acts to demonstrate intent and method in the current charge.
Did Smith testify? Did he try to explain any of this?
No, he chose not to. Apparently, he just passed a handwritten note to his lawyer saying he wouldn't take the stand.
Bold move. Or maybe just knew he couldn't explain it away.
Perhaps. The jury didn't need long to decide anyway.
How long?
20 minutes. Guilty verdict. July 1st, 1915.
And the sentence.
Death by hanging.
Did he appeal? Especially against that system evidence being allowed.
He did appeal on those grounds, yes. But the appeal was dismissed. The courts upheld the use of the evidence in this context.
So George Joseph Smith was hanged. When was that?
August 1915. That was the end for him.
But the case left a legacy, didn't it? Especially legally.
It absolutely did. That precedent allowing evidence of a system of similar crimes became quite important. It was used in later trials.
Like the John Bodkin Adams case, wasn't it? Another suspected serial killer doctor.
Exactly. Though it's fair to say that approach, using similar fact evidence, has also been criticized over the years for potentially biasing juries. It's a complex legal issue.
So wrapping this up, what stands out most from this whole grim story?
For me, it's that combination, Smith's own repetitive, almost compulsive pattern of crime.
Mixed with those baffling deaths that just didn't seem right.
And then the arrival of truly methodical forensic science with Spilsbury. How observation and rigorous testing expose something incredibly dark.
Yeah, it shows how tiny details, a bruise, a will, the size of a bathtub, can build up to reveal the truth when someone looks closely enough.
It really highlights the importance of forensic pathology, forensic science in general, in criminal investigation.
It's a truly disturbing case, the cold-bloodedness of it all, but also kind of intellectually fascinating how it was solved.
Definitely. It's a testament to investigation, deduction, and applying science to seek justice.
Makes you think, though, beyond crime, how often do we miss patterns, miss the system behind events, because we only look at isolated incidents?
That's a great point. Recognizing those connections, those underlying methods or motives, is key to understanding so much, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe something for you, the listener, to ponder. Where else might looking for a system, a hidden pattern, reveal a deeper truth? Definitely food for thought.
Indeed.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Join us next time for another exploration.